everyone, and welcome to another NAIOP episode. My name is Jade Turan, and I am the Marketing Chair Board Member for NAIOP Utah here in Salt Lake City. And my day job is I work for FFKR Architects, also in Salt Lake City. And today we are going to talk to Theresa Foxley of EDCUtah. Theresa, good morning and
Hey,
welcome.
good morning, Jade. Thanks so much for having me on. I hope that you and your family and everyone in your work family are doing well.
Yeah, I think for the most part we're doing well, just a little bit of cabin fever, but that's normal, right?
Sure. We're all climbing the walls.
Yeah. Well, Theresa, why don't we get started with just a small introduction of yourself and EDCUtah for those viewers that aren't as familiar.
Great. Well, thanks, Jade. Again, my name is Theresa Foxley. I'm the president and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation of Utah. And we're a private nonprofit that was founded to catalyze quality job growth throughout the state of Utah. We've been operating, as I mentioned, for 30 years, but we feel like we have a renewed sense of mission and purpose right now, given all of the impacts of the COVID-19 virus, both on our health and on our economic landscape. So our core competencies as an organization are research. So we research Utah's competitive economic advantages, business marketing, getting those advantages into the hands of business decision makers, and corporate recruitment project management. We do this all as part of Team Utah, so we pull in a number of public and private partners, and we try and stitch those important stakeholders together so that we can attract quality jobs and capital investment all throughout the state.
Wow, that sounds great. That sounds like a big role, and we've heard just great things about what's happening coming out of your office. So, let's just dive right in. What is happening with EDCUtah's deal flow? Are you on par to have a successful year? I know, a wrench was just thrown into everybody's 2020 plans. Tell me what's going on with your deal flow.
Well, Jade, we run on a fiscal year that begins July 1st and runs through June 30th. And before COVID-19, we were on par to have a very successful year, and we'll still finish the year quite strongly despite a major drop in this last quarter's activity. We will have, I think, a high watermark year in terms of new jobs and capital investment in the state. A lot of that was driven by a couple of big projects that announced last fall. So Project Unity, which is Northrop Grumman, they will be doing their ground-based strategic deterrent, the update to the nuclear triad. That will be headquartered on Hill Air Force Base. And so that's a really big win and a big project, and a few others that had major job numbers attached to them. So we are still looking to close the year strong, although we don't think that we'll close it as strong as we would had COVID-19 not impacted the global economy. As far as deal flow, what you might expect, COVID-19 is having an impact on our pipeline. We are still seeing new projects come into the system. We've been monitoring this week over week, and we're averaging about 3 projects per week that are coming into the system. But it's had an impact on projects that were in the pipeline prior to COVID-19. Many of them have decided that they're going to put their corporate relocation or expansion decisions on hold. We've had very few cancel, which I think is a positive. But many companies right now, I think, are waiting to see how this plays out, waiting to see what the demand is for their product, and essentially trying to understand whether or not this is a long-term risk to their business, or whether or not this is a more short-term risk that they'll need to live with. So we're hopeful that a number of the proposals around serology testing, treatments for the virus, and other things will provide some confidence to business decision makers, or at least some more clarity, because right now I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, as all of us are feeling it and experiencing it.
Now, Theresa, I know you and your team, you travel a lot, you're meeting with people a lot. What are you doing differently to keep your pipeline moving? Using any technology? I mean, everyone is just a little bit, everyone's doing everything differently, but what is EDCUtah doing differently to keep this pipeline moving?
Yeah, well, we have had to adapt and innovate, certainly, as I know everyone on this call has had to. But relationship management with our current projects is critical, and we're trying to do this in new digital ways where, yes, we might have done that in face to face. We are planning our first all digital, all virtual site meeting that will happen next week. So we'll be doing real estate tours, conferences with our education and workforce providers, and it'll all be shot either by video for the real estate tours, or it will be done like we're doing right now via Zoom. So with people not being able to travel, either us going outbound or clients coming inbound, having those technology tools at our disposal is really important. We are trying to maintain relationships with our site selector community. We're doing that again virtually. And we are even launching virtual campaigns that otherwise would have been conducted in person. We run a program called Global Strategies and Outreach, and this is our proactive recruitment effort where we try to identify high growth companies where there's some sort of overlap with Utah that we might be able to solve a pain point that they have, whether that's an education pain point or a logistics pain point. And we are going to be doing those now virtually, at least for the time being. And so I'll be happy to come back and report to the NAIOP group how successful they've been. Obviously, we need to be really cognizant that people have a lot on their plates right now. Certainly trying to make sure that we're not seen as being too opportunistic for parts of the country that have been challenged by this in a more significant way than we have, which isn't to minimize the significance of it here, but so we're really our message will be tailored for the time that we're in as well. So lots of technology use as you would expect.
Mm-hmm. What can the commercial industry do to come out of this quicker? Is there anything we can be doing, proactively be doing? We're all using different kinds of technology, but is there anything the commercial industry here in Utah can do to, you know, just come out of this quicker? Maybe, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, good question, Dave. Well, there's so much being written right now about how this pandemic will forever change our society, and of course, so much of that chapter in our history is yet to be written. But we do know it will change real estate. We know that there are those of us like at EDCUtah who we weren't Luddites, but we didn't lean on technology as much 3 months ago as we did 3 days ago. And we've realized that our team can be really productive by using video platforms and other things. And you've seen some large companies say that they might shrink their overall real estate footprint. But it also means that they're probably not shrinking, they're probably growing their daily employee to square footage ratio. Mm-hmm. And so being a partner in configuring office spaces so that they are more functional for a less dense, so we've sort of seen the pendulum move towards density. We think it might swing back the other way. Being a partner on helping to make sure that your partners feel like there's safe and sanitary within their buildings. I think that'll be a big part of this from a commercial standpoint. And I also think audio-visual integration within workspaces is going to be huge. A lot of the early guidance is suggesting that, of course, you continue to social distance for some number of months. So even if you have brought your employees back into the office, all hands on deck meetings crammed into conference rooms aren't going to be the norm. And so ensuring that AV is up to snuff for higher bandwidth and higher utilization is going to be really important, I think, as well. And then building in more open green space and other things, that will be, in my opinion, a big part of what the future looks like for the commercial sector. What do you think, Jade?
Well, I definitely agree with you that, we're talking about this right now in my office and commercial office space. It's, reprioritizing space and repurposing space, not necessarily reducing space, but, there's a lot that's still not written. We don't know what the regulations are going to be when people start coming back to the office. And I know my office has over 100, near 200 people, in that building. And, we just don't know, re-entering, the office, what will be changing, what will need to change. So I guess that's, my opinion is, to the AV capabilities, and everyone is going to be, forced to use that because so for those that don't want to use it, that's the only way, some businesses can survive is adapting and using those resources and technology infrastructure we have now. So Theresa, traditionally Utah has had a very low unemployment rate, under 3%, and with this pandemic, that could triple that number. So
we have gone, as you mentioned, from having one of the lowest unemployment rates statewide in the country to obviously that is creeping up. We continue to perform better than other states, despite the fact that most of the impacted workers to date have been tourism and hospitality related, and we do have a very strong tourism and hospitality industry. The diversity of the state's economy, I think, has been a big benefit to us, and we are the 7th best state in terms of our unemployment insurance trust fund longevity. So in other words, we're going into this in a position of strength as compared to a number of other states, which is a good thing for Utah residents. Unemployment is such a nuanced part of economic development. A low unemployment rate 2 months ago meant that the fundamentals of this market were very good. And so even though you had a low unemployment rate and a challenge for some employers to find the talent they were looking for, it gave them confidence that this place was a good long-term bet. And those companies bet on themselves as well, and they bet on their ability to be an employer of choice and attract great talent. And so, a 2.3% unemployment rate is certainly a challenge when you're in that and you're an employer and you're trying to hire, but it's also a good indicator that those market fundamentals were good. A higher unemployment rate in some instances might be attractive to employers as they are thinking about where to grow. It might mean that there's more bandwidth within the labor pool. We're still sort of sorting through to see much of the attached. So there's a sort of funny nomenclature in unemployment insurance, which is whether or not someone's job attached. And so of the claims that have entered the system since the end of March, 70% of those employees are what's called job attached. So in other words, they've been furloughed. So they have a job to go back to. So again, depending on some of the federal stimulus funds, depending on the state response, we'll see where that unemployment rate ends up settling out in the long term. And we'll build, of course, a marketing campaign and strategy around that based on what that might mean for Utah from a competitive advantage standpoint.
Interesting. Well, Theresa, that was my last question. Is there anything you want to add to close?
Well, I would just mention have been really fortunate at EDCUtah to have been involved in the governor's economic task force, and we've loaned a number of our employees to spend part of their time to that initiative. I would encourage those who've not had the chance to read Utah Leads Together version 2 to take a look at it. It was released on Friday, April 17th, and it has a couple of really interesting things in it. One, some new data tools that the state is utilizing to help us determine where we need to be with respect to social distancing. And so those data tools include testing and tracing and identifying what our transmission rate is, hospital ICU utilization, the point of transmission. So was it community spread or was it through tourism or some other activity? And then this color coding that is going, it's an overlay that will help businesses in certain industries with guidance based on where we are in that color coding scheme, how can they operate most safely and how can they then gain the confidence of both their employees and their customers that they're operating safely, and that helps to build consumer confidence, which is going to be key to this recovery.
I see. I'm glad you touched base on the task force. Would you mind just giving, for those viewers that haven't read Utah Leads, would you just explain a little bit about what the governor's Utah Economic Task Force is? And
Yeah, absolutely.
who compiled it? Who's a part of it?
Yeah, so on March 16th, the governor formed an economic response task force, understanding that there would be some major economic impacts as a result of the COVID-19 virus, both in terms of what it was doing to our overall public health, but also the public health and social distancing measures and that impact on the economy. So as you started to see restrictions around in-person dining and encouragement to telework and stay home orders issued by certain jurisdictions, and then ultimately the state issuing a stay home directive. The governor wanted to put into place a task force that could help put together a plan, again, to give Utahns a little bit of insight into what was coming. So the major innovation in it is this time boxing and setting out 3 different phases: the urgent phase, which we're in now, the stabilization phase, which will be the next phase we enter into, and the recovery phase, and then building out what we might think of as both federal, state, local, and private policy interventions that will help mitigate some of this very negative economic impact as a result of the virus. It's a terrific group. There are members of the public sector that are represented, members like myself from the private sector, business owners, small business owners. It's a really diverse group, but the charge again is to help work on specific issues as a result of this. So we've also broken up into small working groups. I lead one on critical infrastructure and supply chain. There's a housing group, a financial services group, a policy group, which I sit on, and which was the group that developed most of the plan. And so there are a lot of different areas that we're trying to analyze and put into place best practices. One of the things that we're always proud of is when we do something like this, that's a big initiative, we put the public health experts and the economists in a room, and we sort of said, how can we understand each other better? And then we released the plan, and now we know that other states are using it as a model, and I believe even parts of the federal government are going to be using it as a model. So it really is an instance of Utah leading, and something that I think we can all be proud of.
Oh, wow. What a compliment that other states are using this as a model and the federal government. That's a huge compliment to Utah. I understand, Utah leads version 2 is a data-driven approach. So there's
Mm-hmm.
plenty of data to support this plan. This version 2 plan, how will it help businesses going forward? I know a lot of businesses are just in dire straits right now. And can you break that down for us just a little bit about how, this data-driven approach is going to help Utah businesses?
Yeah, so I think everybody has become sort of an armchair epidemiologist, but we know that social distancing was put into place to flatten the curve because we didn't have the testing capacity in place to help us be more surgical, or to help our public health professionals be more surgical in how they manage that social distancing. And so the Utah Leads Together version 2 plan does allow us to be so much more surgical because of the testing and tracing measures. There will be wide scale field testing. So in other words, we'll pull random samples to be able to understand when hotspots are propping up. And then you can do some geofencing around those areas as opposed to shutting down whole communities or whole sectors of the economy at one time. So hopefully it means fewer and less severe business disruptions, which should be a help to businesses. And that's the overall picture. Within the plan, though, there are also some business resources and guidance that should be helpful in terms of how to access state and federal funding that is available through stimulus programs at both levels. And then finally, there's this color-coded guidance that I mentioned. So at any given time, based on these data tools, the state, and in consultation with our local partners, will say, okay, Salt Lake County, you're in COVID orange. That means that all of the businesses in Salt Lake County that fall within these industry sectors ought to be adapting these best practices. But Juab County, you might be in COVID green. So that means you're doing this instead. So then if there's issues or challenges where it's more densely populated or in a tourism area, the rest of the state might be able to function closer to whatever the new normal will be than to what we've been operating under for the last 6 weeks.
Well, Theresa, I mean, that's all I had. you gave some very, very helpful information, and I know you're very busy. Thank you for taking the time today to join us.
Absolutely.
Um,
Thanks for having me, Jade.
of course, of course. So, viewers, please join us, next week for another, helpful video. If you have any questions, feel free to email Lindsay at NAIOP@NAIOPutah.org. And if you have any ideas for another topic of discussion, but we're very grateful for Theresa Foxley joining us today, reiterating vital information, and this will be posted on our normal channels. Thank you so much.